Well, this sucks. How much rust? All of it. Hello, how's it diddling, folks? This is a much needed and overdue fleet update of all my projects that I've got or did have. So I've been trying to make this video for the past 3 months, and every time I've gone to film it, I've just ended up deleting the footage and just thought I'll do it at some other point, but I need to get around to it, and here we are. So what's happening with the fleet of cars? I say fleet, there is not 7, 6 cars. I'm now down to 3. One of them, a fourth, is a bit in the balance at the moment. We're not sure, but I'll explain further in the video about that. So some project cars have left. So the first car I'm going to talk about that's left is, or was, my Renault Clio, the 1.8 16 valve in Naples red with the leather interior, but was extremely, well, I wouldn't say extremely rotten, but to a lot of folks it was rotten. And, well, it's gone. The decision to sell the Clio was basically, I hadn't worked on it for a few months, even through the summer, and instead of it just sitting out on the front doing nothing and slowly degrading and trying to melt back into the earth like Renault Clios like to do of that vintage, and to be fair, most cars of that vintage, ideally it needed a full restoration. The thing kind of blowing apart and all new panels welding in, and that takes time and money. Well, I had the time, but unfortunately I didn't have the money. So instead of it letting it sit and rot, I sold it. And at the point of filming this, it is back on Facebook Marketplace for sale for a little bit more than what I got for it. Am I gutted about the car going? A little bit, because I wanted to get it back on the road, but unfortunately finances and other aspects in life just meant that it needed to go. So it's gone. So the next vehicle that is gone from the fleet, some of you might know, was my 2004 MG ZR 160 in biomorphic green, a car that I saved from being scrapped. And that's gone as well. Now, I didn't really want to sell the MG. It genuinely was a forever car, just like another project of mine. Unfortunately, again, circumstances had changed and it needed to go. I didn't want to sell it, but yeah, it's gone. Now, luckily, it has gone to another YouTuber, Rob from Beards and Bangers. He was the man that I messaged and said, "Hey Rob, do you know anyone that would like my MG?" And he pretty much instantly replied, "Yes, I do. Me, I want to buy it." So we kind of met halfway, because he lives all the way down in Aylesbury. And if you've ever been towards Aylesbury, it is in the back arse end of nowhere with no real like motorways or anything like that. It's a bit of a pig to get round. So we met halfway on the M1, and yeah, he had a look round it, brought Austin to have a mooch round, and Austin drove that back, and Rob was very kind to give me a lift back home. So, you know, he had pretty much a 3-hour journey of driving me home and then back home. Like I said, I didn't want to sell it, and I didn't really want to sell it to just any old Tom, Dick and Harry. So I know that the car has gone to a good place. Rob is pretty thorough with his cars, Everyone that I've seen that he's worked on and got back up to scratch has been top notch. He's going to do what, unfortunately, I can't do in the period of time. Getting the bodywork sorted, getting it resprayed, and basically factory fresh. Yeah, I am, honestly, I'm still annoyed and a bit upset and angry with myself that I sold it, because not just because it's a rare car, or genuinely the first time I saw a biomorphic green MG ZR, I instantly fell in love with the colour. And I've always been looking out for a 3-door 160, but they've never been in the spec that I wanted. And this one, Halo, turned up. Yes, the body is rough. It needs some work. It needs paint and some panel beating. Actually, quite a lot of panel beating, let's be honest. But it was good bones for a project. It mechanically was spot on. I'd quite happily get in that car and drive it anywhere in the country. So that really sucks to sell that one. You might be able to tell that I am genuinely, I'm gutted that I had to sell it. But it is what it is, and maybe one day I'll be able to own it back if I can pry it out of Rob's hands. But the likelihood of that happening is going to be pretty much slim. I've got more chance of winning the lottery and getting struck by lightning at the same time than possibly owning that car again, because I know that it is one of Rob's dream cars to own. So yeah, that's the fate of the MG. Now, Rob did do a video on collecting the vehicle, and I feature in it. So if you fancy watching that video, I'll pop a link down in the description below so you can watch that and possibly see the point of my face when I'm talking to him of just how gut-wrenching it was for me. I don't want to be, I'm not being over dramatic or anything like that. I genuinely didn't want to sell it. So that means we're left with number 3, the third car. Now this one is a bit tricky. So it's Purple Slurple, my 98 Suzuki Wagon-R. Now when I bought the vehicle a second time, I didn't have any space at home to be able to park it on the front, because at the time I'd got my Mercedes, which is still there, the Clio parked next to that, and then the MG parked next to that. So at the time when I bought it, there was no room at the house. However, there is some parking spaces round the corner from me, and they were old garages that had been knocked down because they've got asbestos roof, and it was cheaper for the council to just flatten the garages, and yeah. So it was parked up there for a bit, and I was working on it, and it was not causing a problem or any issue. Unfortunately, a bit of a knobhead neighbour, that's the only way I can describe it, decided that, oh, you can't park that there. Oh, that's my parking space. Even though there's no sign saying that the land is owned by the council, blah, blah, blah. So when I went to work on it one day, there was a notice slapped on the windscreen from a council enforcement officer who clearly spoke to someone, and or someone spoke to them, and he slapped a notice on it that I had to get it moved by a certain time. So I did. I moved it further down the road, round the corner, and I knew it couldn't stay there. It needed to either sit on the front of the house or put it somewhere else. So I ended up getting a container, which was all well and good. Unfortunately, I got behind on payments. Now, the price of the container, from when I first started to rent it, quickly rose every month. It didn't stay at a flat rate, which is I was under the assumption. I should have read the small print through. So what started as a cheap alternative to keep the car and do mechanical work on it, even though there was no lights in the container or no electric, it meant that it was in a dry place and I can work at it at my leisure. And that worked out good. If you look at the videos that I've done on Purple Slurple, I'd got to the point where I'd reinstalled the rear suspension. It had brand new bolts. You know, the cost of all the work that I'd done to it, buying all the new bolts, rear arms, handbrake cables, was worth probably 3 times more than what I'd actually paid for the vehicle. And the amount of money that, unfortunately, because I got behind on payments, means that it is definitely now really expensive. Now, any sane human being would just go, cut your losses and go, that's it, done. Been a couple of times when I've been tempted to do that. But I am currently working with the company in order to be able to pay the debt off without incurring any more debt on the container. Now, at the end of the day, they're well within their rights to just go, no, you haven't paid for so long, that's it, we're going to empty the container out and scrap it. Because to be fair, that's all it's worth. No one is going to buy a rusty nearly 30-year-old Suzuki Wagon-R. Currently, the Suzuki is in a bit of a grey area. Now, I am, like I said, working with a container company in order to pay the bill off so I can get the car back out the container and get it back home, and working hard to try and get it back. So that leaves 3 other vehicles. First, my Volvo V70, which you've seen in a couple of videos. Now that one is due an MOT very soon. I think it's like the 10th of October, so I haven't got much time to get that MOT. Now, I do know that it will need some work, and it's just waiting for a dry day to be able to get onto it and do the jobs. The second vehicle is the Peugeot 205 CTI. It was the first car on the channel that I essentially started and pretty much bought for the channel to work on, and it was up for sale. But after selling the MG, I, to be fair, didn't want to sell the Peugeot. You know, I'd already had a bit of a kick in the nuts from having to sell the MG and get rid of the Clio. I genuinely, after thinking about it, I wasn't prepared to sell the Peugeot. Because it is a great car. Well, how great can the Peugeot be? Well, let me tell you. The car was sat outside. It's MOT'd. It's taxed. I hadn't driven it in almost 2 months. Now, I was fully expecting the battery to be flat, because a lot of vehicles that I've owned in the past, and to be fair, there's even been new vehicles or fairly new vehicles I've worked on when I used to be a technician. You'd go to them and dead as a doornail. The Peugeot, after checking all the levels, making sure that the oil's fine, coolant, everything like that, I was kind of expecting it to kind of do the same. But no, I did the immobiliser, put the key in the ignition, and it fired straight away, like I'd just started it a couple of hours before. And for me, that really kind of said, don't sell it. It's a good car, Dave. Yes, whoever was to buy it would be having a cracking little Peugeot, but I had to kind of weigh up the options. Do I sell the Peugeot but have money in my pocket to possibly buy another project that might not be as good? Or do I keep the Peugeot and just be skint? And I've chose to keep the Peugeot because it is a great fun little car to drive. I've done a couple of thousand miles in it, and it is, out of all the cars I'd quite happily get that I currently own, I'd quite happily drive it down to Devon in a heartbeat. and I know it'd be perfectly fine. I wouldn't have any issues with it because it is a cracking little car. It's a 205 GTI, essentially, just a soft top. So the Peugeot, for the meantime, is staying. So the last car that I currently own is one that you've seen a couple of times, but I've not really done any proper videos on it. It's my 1997 Mercedes C180 W202. This is a car that I've owned for the longest. It's actually the longest owned car I've ever had. Usually I keep a car for maybe anything from a couple of weeks to, maybe 2 years. But the Mercedes has stuck with me, and I refuse to sell it because I really have an emotional attachment to that car, which is a story that only 5 or 6 people know about. And I really don't want to sell that. So it's staying. Now, with the Clio gone, the MG gone, possibly, like I say, Purple Slurple is kind of hanging in the balance at the moment. It does mean that I can put a bit more time into getting the Mercedes back on the road. I've owned the car for 6 years this year. I think it's 6. Yeah, 6 years. I bought it in 2018. God, I've had it for 6 years. Bloody hell. Yeah, longest car I've ever owned. Now, granted, it has sat out front of my house for 3 years, and I've not started it in that 3 years since I parked it up. It does have its faults. I know that it did have an issue, and still most likely has an issue, with the cam position sensor. So you can crank on it for about a good 30 seconds and then it would fire up. It never leave me stranded. It always fired. It was just very kind of a bit slow to start. And the fact is, I really miss driving that car. It might be the lowest spec W202 you could buy. It's got the 1.8 16 valve engine. I think it makes 121 horsepower. Not great, but the car doesn't really weigh that much, even though it is a Mercedes and you think, oh, it's a big, heavy, bumbling car. It doesn't. I think it weighs less than 1.5 tons. I think it's like 1,400 kilos. So, and like I say, and the car's a manual, which is a very rare nowadays because most W202s are automatic. And that was the only reason why I bought it, really. It was because it was a manual and I'd never owned a Mercedes before. And it was a cool colour. Plus, it was really cheap. Hopefully, within the next couple of months, I will be doing some more videos on the Mercedes. And it will involve a will it start video. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll either be really easy. I'll chuck a battery on and after a couple of attempts of starting it, it will fire up, or it will just be an absolute pig. And the 1/4 of a tank of E10 fuel, E10 fuel, would have absolutely destroyed the fuel pump. I'm hoping not. I'm really hoping not, because that's just going to be a can of worms on that one. But yeah, expect Mercedes content very soon. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this little update of the projects and where I am with them, or not. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, entirely up to you. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Oh, that jazz. And until the next time, have a good one, and remember, tidy bar.